Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and to another interesting video. Today we're going to be talking about talent acquisition during pandemic. How much has it changed since this started and how much will it impact the talent acquisition industry for years to come? In the past year and a half, the current COVID-19 pandemic changed our lives in the ways that most people weren't prepared for. But most importantly, it had a huge impact on our jobs and how we operate daily. During this time, many people around the world have suffered greatly. I'm not talking here about the mental or the physical suffering. I'm talking about our jobs and how it impacted our income and our ability to provide for our families. But before we go into all of the details, please leave a like, comment down below on what your experience has been with job search or your current job or talent acquisition during this pandemic. And subscribe if you want to learn more about talent acquisition or recruitment. Personally, I was lucky that the pandemic didn't have an impact on my job as it did for many people around the world. As a talent acquisition specialist in the IT industry, I want to share my observation on how the pandemic changed how we work, how the processes can change overnight, and what should we expect going forward. Talent acquisition is a violent part of the business world. Usually when the crisis occurs, it's the first part of the business that suffers greatly. Especially if the organization doesn't have a financial opportunity to grow during the crisis. This means that recruiters and talent acquisition specialists are the first to lose their jobs because they don't have what to do, and that means that they don't bring any value to the company at that moment. This is the situation that we find ourselves in right now. Once restrictions started happening around the world, job seekers pulled back in fear of uncertainty. This uncertainty comes from seeing many companies permanently shutting down and large conglomerates laying off a huge portion of their workforce. In the eyes of the job seekers, what was once viewed as a sense of security now looks just like an unnecessary risk on their career and their income. Let's explore this a little bit more. Before the current pandemic, when we look for a job, we look at all options, all the way from conglomerates to startup companies, and we weigh pros and cons of each before we make our decision. When we look at a startup or a small company before pandemic, we would say like, oh, this company or this startup has a potential to make some great product or bring something new to the world. Right now, because of the situation we are in, many of the startups won't make it past their first year. Small to medium-sized companies will have difficulties finding funding or investors to invest in because they see it as an unnecessary risk at the moment as well. This is a sad reality at the moment, but this is also happening to large conglomerates and organizations around the world, same as it's happening for small companies and startups. Before pandemic, when we looked at giants across the industry, the first thought that would come to our mind would be, oh, this is where I want to build my career. This gave us a false sense of security that if crisis happens, these large organizations would be able to support their workforce. Well, what we saw was completely opposite of that. Same thing that happened to startups and small businesses happened to large organizations. They were also forced to lay off a huge percentage of their workforce. Some companies that had to lay off a large percentage of their workforce had a great and respectful way of doing it. Prime example of this is Airbnb. They had to lay off 25% of their workforce, and they did it in a great way. The point of this is that all of this changes how talent acquisition space operates at the moment. The way it worked before was we would look for candidates, have our phone screens, and then invite them to our office for a round of face-to-face interviews where they get to meet the team and the team gets to meet them. And if everything went well, we would expect them in an office in a couple of weeks for onboarding and subsequent work. Once restrictions started being adopted by more and more governments around the world, this changed everything for us. In nations like Ukraine, more particularly in IT, it was not common to work remotely all the time. Most companies expected their team members in the office for many different reasons. Then the pandemic happened and we were forced to move all our work from in-person to online. Video interviews became a go-to place for us as talent acquisition specialists and recruiters to move candidates along the way in the process because face-to-face was not possible and still isn't. In my opinion, after our initial phone screen, it was better to have all other interviews in person because the candidate gets to meet the team and feel their energy. The same goes for the team. They also get to meet the person they will be working with in person. We all need to adapt to the current situation, so the talent acquisition space around the world embraced video interviewing because there was no other way for us to do it. We all learn as we go. We made mistakes will be made. After all, we're all humans, and without mistakes we can't grow and we can't achieve our goals. What we as talent acquisition specialists and recruiters can expect during pandemic and post-pandemic? Many things will change. I will try to focus on just a small portion of them that it was my personal experience when speaking to candidates. Should we expect to see more candidates asking to work full-time remotely? Absolutely yes. Everyone is reading the news and they see that the large tech companies are offering full-time remote work indefinitely. So why wouldn't everybody else? While there are candidates who can't wait to go back to the office, there will be candidates who want to stay to work full-time at home. Now let's talk about some of the questions we can expect from the candidates. Does your company encourage full-time remote work? Your answer should be absolutely yes, unless your business requires some sort of security around it. Will working full-time remotely influence my prospects of growth within the company? This is a hard no answer. Everyone should have the ability to grow within the company regardless of whether they want to work from the office or from home. How will this affect my compensation package? Reality is that some companies will be paying less for people who are working remotely. This shouldn't happen, but it is what it is. Everybody should be compensated fairly for the work that they're doing. What are the challenges that the team is facing because of the pandemic? You need to be honest and transparent as much as you can. If you are not, the candidate will find out one way or the other. Worst case scenario is that you hire them and they find out that you can't make payroll or that the bonus is cancelled. That will make them lose the trust in the company and possibly leave, leaving you as a talent acquisition specialist to work on a position again. How are you preparing to get back to the office safely post-pandemic? If you don't know the answer to this question, you should find out. Every company is preparing in a different way. If you laid off employees because of the pandemic, what were the ways you helped them look for a new job? How did your business adapt to pandemic, and how did the strategy of your organization change during this time? These are just some of the examples that I can remember that candidates asked me during my calls with them. Honestly, they have every right to ask these questions. And we as employers should be able to answer all of them. Should we as talent acquisition specialists change our strategies to support this long term? Of course. If history teaches us anything, is that every decade or two there is a pandemic or a virus going on. My conclusion is that we shouldn't have been unprepared as we were right now. And in the future we should do a better job of planning if something like this happens again. I have an important question for you. What is your opinion on this? How do you see talent and job market in the next few years? Write some comments about it and let me know. If you like this video, subscribe and stay tuned for more content on talent acquisition. See you in the next video.